Welcome everybody to a Tilt webinar with Melinda Bailey on tools for dyslexic learners. It's a Tilt webinar on Thursday, the 26th of January, 2023, and it's 8 o'clock. So my name is Helen Myers. I'm chair of the London branch of the Association for Language Learning. Always we acknowledge the people who helped to set up these webinars all that time ago, but the most important person who has really driven these webinars is Jo Dale. So Jo, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us about anything you have on offer?
I would absolutely love to, Helen. Thank you ever so much. So it's really great to run another Tilt webinar. It's been quite a few months since we did the last one, and we're in for a real treat this evening because we have the amazing Melinda Bailey from the States, from Louisiana. In the States, which is wonderful. Bit about me, if that's okay. So I'm an independent languages consultant. I do make a living through training people normally on the use of technology, although I'm also investigating in the possibility of doing a podcasting side hustle as well. But in the channel, in the chat even, in the chat, I have put a list of 18 different sessions to give you a flavor of the sorts of things I could provide either remotely or face-to-face if you would like. I can do sessions for people literally all over the world, but if you're from the UK and you'd like me to come to your school and do a session, then that would be fantastic. I also wanted to plug a collaboration with Esmeralda Salgado, who I'm sure you all know. We have put together a series of 6 webinars looking at all 4 skills: listening, speaking, reading and writing, plus some ideas around preparation for the GCSE and also the some ideas around gamification. Now, we've done the first one already on listening, but you can still get the recording of that if you're interested, and you can sign up for individual sessions. The next one is on reading, which is on the 1st of February, and we've also put together a special discounted rate if you want to purchase all 6 webinars. What that means is you'll be sent the recording of the first one, and then you can attend all the other ones live, and everyone who signs up will be sent the recording as well. And it's very inexpensive, and each one is 90 minutes long, and really fantastic professional development. And if you do go for all 6, it's amazing value for money in my humble opinion. So there we are. Okay, back to Helen.
Okay. So please do join the Association for Language Learning if you're not already a member. Please put in the chat if you are a member to say, do join. It is the independent association for language teachers in the country, and really it allows people to meet together. We get a very good magazine, and also it's a voice for languages. We've got another webinar which is coming up very soon on Thursday the 9th of February. We've got links there to all of the webinars that we've had so far. As Jo said, we had about 140, something like that. And we're coming up now to our national conference for ACTFL, which is taking place in Sheffield, and it's a fantastic event, 17th to the 18th of March, with really good speakers. And there's Liz Black, our lovely president. So I'm now going to stop talking as Jo introduces Melinda. We've got a slide there about what the session is about, and then a slide which is introducing Melinda. Over to you, Jo.
Fantastic. So Melinda and I have known each other for quite a few years now. We met face to face back in 2010 at the Linguoscope conference in Brighton. I remember it was a very sunny conference. I can't remember the exact month it would have been. I think it probably would have been June, but anyway. And I remember a whole load of us being on the beach and having a real laugh all those years ago. But I've been connected with Melinda for a few years before that. The Prof's page on Twitter. If you don't follow Melinda, I'd really encourage you to do so. So Melinda was a world language educator for many years. More recently, she's gone into edtech, and I saw her tweeting about a presentation to do with dyslexia, and I thought it would be perfect if we could invite her along to do a Tilt webinar, technology and language teaching webinar around dyslexia, because I thought it would be something not only of great interest to language teachers, but also it's obviously it's a whole school issue as well. So I was really thrilled when Melinda said yes. And without further ado, I'd love to pass over to Melinda Bailey to talk about the tools for dyslexic learners, but with a a lens as a world language teacher as well. So we're very grateful that you've sort of changed this and tweaked this to try and make it as relevant as possible for language teachers. So over to you, Melinda, and thank you so much for agreeing to do this. And it's great to connect again after all these years.
Yeah, it's been a while. So like Joe said, I teach, now I teach teachers how to use technology, but before I taught French in the high school classroom here in Louisiana and also in Alabama, and tools for dyslexic learners and strategies for teaching dyslexic learners became a passion project because I moved from teaching in a public school to a private school, and we were not, we didn't have the same accommodations that we would in a public school. So when I was in grad school, this really became a passion project, and I researched a lot of this information because I've seen a rise in dyslexic learners in my classroom as a teacher and now as a tech coach with other teachers. So you can also access this presentation. The link is in the chat. I'm going to paste it one more time. And then I also created a shortened link with bit.ly /tilt dyslexia. So feel free to look at that. Okay, so like Joe said in the chat, you can post questions in the chat. I have the chat up so I can see it because I wanted to accommodate learners, including the attendees of the presentation. So if you have a question while I'm presenting, please feel free to ask it. We'll also leave some time at the end of the presentation for questions as well. So for today's session, we're going to learn what dyslexia is, learn simple modifications for dyslexic learners in the classroom as well as for assessments, and then learn how technology can support dyslexic learners. So again, if you want my contact information, my name is Melinda Bailey and I am on Twitter. I'm not MFL Twitterati, but I like to think that I am. You also have my email address right here. I'm mbailey6@ebrschools.org. So I'm in East Baton Rouge Parish in Louisiana. So that's why it's EBR. Okay, so what is dyslexia? Dyslexia overall is a processing issue. It does not have anything to do with intelligence. It is how information is taken in and then processed out, usually through speaking. So it affects listening and speaking and reading. 1 in 5 students exhibit some symptoms of dyslexia. So you probably taught a student or know someone with symptoms of dyslexia. So some of those symptoms that you might see if it's primary or, if it's before they start school, they might be a late talker. They may have trouble saying words correctly. They may have trouble remembering different things, whether it's letters, numbers, colors. In primary, it might be problems processing what is heard, that they cannot repeat something, that they have difficulty spelling. They might have poor handwriting. They might have difficulty finding the right word or forming answers to questions. They might require more time than other students to give you an answer for something. Again, we see, sorry, I can't remember if I mentioned this, problems remembering the sequence of things. They have trouble sequencing the order of events. And then in secondary, in high school or middle school here, they have difficulty reading, especially reading aloud. They have problems spelling. They cannot pronounce things correctly. They have trouble retrieving words, like it's on the tip of their tongue. They can't figure out what they want to say. They have difficulty summarizing a story, and they have trouble learning a foreign language. So a lot of these strategies and a lot of the discussion of dyslexia is dyslexia in their primary language and their L1. So of course it's going to affect any other language that they would learn with dyslexia. So again, it's a processing issue. Students with dyslexia require more time to complete activities and assessments due to the unique unpacking of information in the brain. So it's very much processing, again, because they have it stored away somewhere. So they're trying to figure out how to extract that information and give it to you in the form of your assessment or assignment or homework or whatever. Students with dyslexia can have trouble expressing their thoughts in word and text. So they can tell you what they know if it's in a low pressure environment, if it's not having to be written down or they're put on the spot to give you an answer right away. They cannot express themselves that quickly in that spur of the moment. They need time, they need preparation. Students with dyslexia may struggle, especially in a foreign language, because it affects their first language. So if they can't read, if they can't spell in their first language, they're not going to be able to, or those problems may carry over into the language that they're learning. So what we're going to do right now is a dyslexia simulation quizzes. If you could, in the chat, let me know if you have used quizzes before. I'm a big quizzes fan. Yes, done. Okay, so in order to join the quizzes, the game code is 258484. So if you go to joinmyquiz.com, you can join, and we're just going to do a short quizzes. This is one of their newer features. Let me see if I can, excuse me. Quizzes has kind of evolved since quarantine teaching, as we call it. But if you will, go ahead and join. Thank you, Helen. And then the game code is 258484. So this is actually a lesson in quizzes now. They have a bunch of different modes, and they have things that we will talk about in the technology aspect of the presentation. But I'll wait a little bit longer for everybody to join. So like the instructions say, you'll be shown a text and asked questions to simulate what it's like reading with dyslexia. So I don't know if y'all have done this before. Me saying y'all, sorry. Oh, Paul has an emoji. Okay, I think that's everyone. Oh, just for you, Helen. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and click start. And the screen, if you haven't used quizzes before, the screen that I'm showing is gonna be the leaderboard. So your screen is gonna have your questions on it that you can answer on. So like I said, this is the question, excuse me, this is the lessons feature of quizzes. So I'm going to give you some time to read this slide. So this is an example of what it would look like for someone with dyslexia. So I'm going to give you another minute to read the slide. Okay, about 30 more seconds. Okay, so now you have a fill in the blank question. The pretty little girl was known as Little Red Riding Hood because she wore a... This is according to the text. So I hope that you read the text. Okay. So let's look at the responses. Red coat, red cape, red cloak. So if we go back to the text, you can see a lot of times dyslexic readers will say that it looks like the numbers are jumping on the page. And if we go up here, we can see because of the brightly colored coat she wore. So the answer was colored coat. So one person put brightly colored coat. No, sorry, that's the correct answer. But the incorrect answer was right there. Okay, so let's go back to responses. So we see hood, cloak, cape, coat. So some people did put coat. Let's go back. Okay, so what were the instructions to the girl? What was she supposed to do? Take grandma a what? Come on, Eric. It is tense music. And then I can disable the timer. But the tense music remains, Helen, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna end the question. It's very intense. People moved up. Basket of cakes. Okay, I don't know if you saw this, but it almost looks like caskets to me. That's what my mind tried to process, but it does say basket of cakes. Oh no, Chris, don't have a nightmare. Okay, so this is our last question we're going to do now. What did the mother warn her not to do? And this will be our last question. Okay, about 25 seconds left. I'm hoping you don't hear my coworkers too much because I'm in my office with the rest of them. Okay, good. Okay, her mother warned her not to stray from the path. So let's see the responses. Talk to strangers, that's very good. Stray. So if you had stray from the path, I incorporated that into the correct answer. So I'm going to go ahead and end our quizzes, but this is available in the presentation for you to use if you'd like to use it with your coworkers. There are some other slides that give you examples of what a simulation would look like. And this one is probably the most difficult for me. That is hard to read. But this is a resource you can use with your schools if you would like. So it's in quizzes available for everyone to use. And it's also on this slide that says dyslexia simulation quizzes. My students would always think I was stuttering, but it is quizzes, I promise. So we've talked about how dyslexia is a processing issue. One of the other things that I learned in grad school that I wish I had learned as a pre-service teacher is Richard Mayer's cognitive theory of multimedia learning. So he has this theory regarding informational processing, and this is true for any learner, whether they have a learning disability or not. So he believes there are 3 parts of information processing. So there's a dual coding theory, and everyone takes in information through auditory and visual for processing information. Sometimes people might also read while they're taking in information. Sometimes if I have the subtitles on a TV show, you might read along while you're listening to the audio, but that's all taking in information. So we take in information auditorily and visually, and then we also have a limited capacity in order to process that information. So each channel can only hold so much at one time. I don't know if you have experienced this maybe with a friend or a partner, how they're trying to tell you about something that might be really important, but something else has your focus. For me, it's normally my toddler or my baby while my husband is trying to talk to me, or maybe you can't listen to someone tell you a story while listening to music at work or something. If there's some way for you to reduce the capacity at which you are taking in information, that will help you understand the information better. And then lastly, we have active processing. So Mayer says that learning is filtering, selecting, organizing, and integrating information. This is where scaffolding can come into play. The way to get students to hold on to the information that they're taking in is to make them process it, to make them use it. So if students can attach what they're learning to something personal, maybe it's a text to self, text to world, text to another text. If they can make building blocks with their learning, they're going to be able to remember it longer and hopefully forever, not just for the test. But active processing is where we have to get students in order to understand and retain information. So how can teachers support dyslexic learners? There are a couple easy classroom accessibility strategies that you can use, and one of them is baked into this presentation. So I have 2 different slides with the same information on them. So let's call this slide 1, and this is slide 2. So if you were a student, which one would you find easier to understand? And you can type this in the chat. Slide 1 or slide 2. Paul says 2, Joe says 2. Although I will say, seeing second 1 is a little confusing as well. Thank you for putting 2 as the number. Anyways, one of the ways that you can make resources easier for your students is to streamline it and also use an emoji. If you are on a Windows machine, the Windows button and P will create an emoji clipboard. So you can share an emoji or label things with emojis. That's one of the ways that we encourage people to organize their Google Classrooms in my district, so that there's an icon to go with the words for struggling readers, for students who are learning English. It's a great way to zero in on information without using words or letters. So you need to highlight essential information. I think one of the things we learned during COVID teaching is really what was the bare basic, what was the minimum that was required for students to learn in order to move to the next level. And so in some ways, we've kind of evaluated our teaching and evolved it into the necessary requirements. So make sure that you're only highlighting essential information. Simplify written directions. Try to leave all of the extra out. Again, it might look like the bare minimum to you, but it could also be the explicit instruction that a student may need. Repeat directions. I don't know about you, but I get tired of repeating directions as a teacher to students, as a teacher to other adults. But again, if they have a limited ability to process information and they're trying to write their name on their paper, they might not be listening to you giving your directions. So we need to get in a spot, get comfortable with repeating ourselves, repeating directions. Again, maybe having your directions on a slide so they can go back and read it. But if they're not strong readers, that might not be useful to them. Block out unnecessary stimuli. So I don't know if it's a trend in the UK, but I was a secondary teacher. I taught high school. A lot of times elementary, yes, using audio recording for homework is a great idea. A lot of times elementary school classrooms will be very, very decorated, and sometimes that's overwhelming to students. So if there's a way that you can block out unnecessary stimuli, for some students that might be having a beige classroom. For some students that might be having quiet music on while they're writing. It just depends on every student, and you have the freedom and the choice to ask students what would their ideal learning space look like. Use tech to increase accessibility. We're going to talk about that later in the presentation. And like Christina said, using audio recording for homework. And then maintaining routines. Just like with elementary school, little kids do great with routines, big kids do great with routines. Everybody does great with routine, right? When our routine isn't a routine, something's wrong and something's different. So keeping as normal a routine as possible will also help, because it has students know what to expect. So those are easy classroom modifications that you can make. And then I wanted to share, this is actually one of the best books that I've read on the topic. It's Dyslexia and Foreign Language Learning, and it's from the UK. It's by Elke Schneider and Margaret Crombie. And so it's at the bottom of the slide, but there are a lot of great principles in this book. And one of the things that they covered are principles of accommodations in world languages. So these are some specific world language accommodations you can make. And here in Louisiana, we say world languages, we don't say foreign languages, because they say that English is a foreign language because originally there were French people here and then there were Spanish people here. So English is the foreign language. But anyways, foreign languages, world languages, include multisensory techniques. They say hear it, see it, say it, write it, act it out. We have a ton of songs in world languages that we use, so feel free to use all those songs. I know they've saved many of my students on assessments and in class. Structure, provide opportunities for scaffolding. So give them opportunities to use what they're learning in order to use that active processing to scaffold information on top of each other. Explicit learning and teaching, guide students to see patterns, because they're not going to know what they don't know. A lot of times I would teach a concept and then I would say, this is where other students can get confused or tripped up. They might not understand something. So kind of anticipating what they may have difficulty with learning. Overlearning, which is rehearsing a skill even after mastery. So encouraging overlearning, even if it's days of the week, months of the year. Give them a concept that they'll feel comfortable with speaking, listening to, reading, writing, so that they can build on that concept. Metacognition, we definitely need to teach students how to investigate structures and the uniqueness of a language, figure out why expressions are used the way that they are, and teach them how to self-correct or monitor reading and writing. I don't know if this is the case for the GCSE, but in the States, we have the advanced placement exam, and they take it and it can give them a score for college credit or university credit. And a lot of times if they self-correct on that test, they still get credit it increases their grade that they would receive. So if we encourage students to begin that now, that'll be profitable to them in the future. Give them a slowed pace of presentation, help provide opportunities for them to practice mastery of each concept before the next is presented. Yes, process, not just outcome. Yes. So I know as a new teacher, I felt tied to a textbook that I had to present all of this curriculum in this amount of time, and it would reappear so that they could master a concept continually throughout the process. But it's very overwhelming to learners if they don't understand something to move on to the next thing. So try to provide opportunities for them to master a concept before the next one is presented as you can. Personal motivation. So this goes more towards not why they're learning the language, but give students an opportunity to tell you when they're comfortable to answer a question out loud. Students with dyslexia do not like being surprised. They don't like being called on or cold called. Give them space if they need to get up and move around, if they need to go outside, get some water, go to the bathroom or something, if they're feeling anxious, give them that space. And then also let them give you a signal or a sign that they would want to participate in speaking in class, or give them the list of questions beforehand so they know what you're going to ask. They do not like to be surprised. Most students don't like to be surprised. So let them do that. Then diagnostic and prescriptive factors. So it's important to evaluate your teaching strategies before, during, and after the lesson. This would be any strategies that you're using, like cold calling, or if you let students use a dictionary or a website to look up a word, that might not be ideal for dyslexic students because they can't rely on a dictionary the same way that strong readers can. So evaluate how you're teaching, what supports you're giving to students, and then also face students when you're speaking. So again, dyslexia is an processing issue. So it might be auditory, it might be visual, and in languages, we have to show them how we speak. So yes, so make sure that you are facing someone when you're speaking. I know for level 1, I'll ask them to look at my mouth a lot more than I would for a level 2 class, but it's still relevant for all classes. And like Helen said, these are good strategies for all learners. So you're not necessarily tailoring your classroom to only dyslexic learners. It's really going to benefit all learners as well. And then lastly, the short concentration span. So in the research that Snyder and Crombie did, they found that high quality concentration in foreign language classrooms ranges 5 to 10 minutes. So find ways to chunk your information or concepts that you're teaching into that amount of time. And then sprinkle in brain breaks. I don't know if you're familiar with brain breaks. There is a Spanish teacher here in the States called Annabelle Allen, and she loves brain breaks. So if you click on this link, it'll take you to her site. And a brain break is just a game that you would play to kind of release some strategies, release some stress, or give your brain a break, because they're doing a lot of work in a foreign language classroom while we're learning foreign language. Okay, then easy assessment, accessibility strategies. So one of the things that you can do is provide prompts before the assessment. And again, you might already do this for your students. A lot of times for speaking exams, we would give students maybe 25 questions that we would ask them. And so we would ask them something from that list. And the purpose of an assessment is not to get a student or gotcha, as you may have heard. But the purpose of an assessment is to figure out what a student knows. So if they don't know a question, you might ask them the question in a different way. You might ask them a different question. You might come back to that question later. But it's definitely helpful if you give them time to answer instead of just cold call or ask them once and then done. Change the format of the assessment to help students demonstrate their learning. So if a student can answer a question in a different way, but still give you the answer you're looking for, would you be willing to give them that opportunity? If you want them to draw a picture and explain the picture in the target language, would that be better than having them write an essay to describe what they ate for dinner? Allow students to type or record. I think Christina mentioned this before. There are a couple tools that we're going to go over on ways to allow students to type or record. If a student is not a strong typer, using autocorrect on their computer is really going to benefit them in typing in their target language or typing in their L1 or their L2. Using technology to increase accessibility, there are a couple of options that you can use on a Chromebook or a Windows computer to create a better learning environment. Record directions, whether it's a video or just audio. You can record yourself giving directions, so that way a student can listen to those directions as many times as they need to. And then allowing students to highlight or color the assessment. Again, one of the things in this book they talk about is color coding and shape coding structures. So maybe like adjectives were green squares, and then subject pronouns were purple diamonds or different things like that. So if you create a way that a student can decode the grammatical structure, it will help them. So if you use one of the tools I'm going to talk about is Kami, where they can annotate a PDF, that's going to help them figure out things better if they can physically mark up or digitally mark up the assessment that you're giving them. Okay, so I'm going to pause here because this is a lot of information. Does anybody have any questions? I still have more to go over, but I just wanted to take a pause.
We had one question so far, which was in the slide when you were talking about repeating. The question was, and you may have covered this, but the question is, should we repeat it in the same way, or should we repeat the same content in a different way? Is it more like that you were saying about overlearning? Is it best to repeat it in exactly the same way, or to say the same thing in a slightly different way?
I think it would depend on what you're trying to assess. But you can't hear me, can you? No, you can. So it depends on what you're trying to assess. In this instance of overlearning, I think it's helping students be comfortable to take risks by rehearsing a skill that they already know. So it would be something that they would say the same way every time, but maybe not the next day, but the third day of the lesson, you introduce how to ask that in a different way. Like always asking, what's your name, right? Comment tu t'appelles? Tu t'appelles comment? Comment t'appelles-tu? Those are all the same thing, but if it's in a different structure, it might freak a student out and they're like, this isn't normal, what do I do? So teaching them that, but yeah, rehearsing it as well.
Fantastic. That's great. I'm really enjoying, as everyone else is, the ideas. This is really, I just love the way in which you've described the rationale before then going into the tech and giving lots of strategies, which I've been tweeting about as well. So you'll see
great.
Lots of notifications as well.
My phone's been lighting up, but I haven't been looking at it.
That's all good. That's great. Right, let's learn some more. Brilliant stuff.
Okay, so again, the principles of accommodations in world languages came from this book, and it was put out by the British Dyslexia Association. So yes, thank you, Helen. It's a great book. Okay, so assessment. All right, so one of the other things that is already baked into this presentation that you don't even know. So research states that some of the best visual representations for students with dyslexia is a beige background with a serif font And this font, Lexend, was designed specifically for students with dyslexia. So this presentation is actually already in this format. If you look at it, it's very simple to read. There is minimal graphics, minimal design. It's really just simple, sleek, and trying to help you figure out what you need to know. So this font, Lexend, it is available in Google Fonts if you use Google. And that was actually one of the questions I was going to ask. Do y'all use Google Classroom? Do you use a learning management system? What do you use for your classes? And if you can, type in the chat. Google. Okay, Christina. Yeah, I didn't know if y'all, ooh, yes. I didn't know if y'all have Chromebooks at your schools or what. I used Teams when I was teaching online as well. But I have Windows machines. I have a desktop at work and then a Microsoft Surface. Okay, so, but not Chromebooks, okay. So technology to support dyslexic learners. All of these, there is a free version, but of course the paid version has more options. As far as I know, most of these are, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Yes, I would recommend Open Dyslexia Font as well, a close equivalent to Lexend. For, Helen, do you mean a close equivalent to Lexend for Windows? Great minds. Yes, I'll have to double check, but I'm pretty sure you could import the font in Windows as well. And actually, I'm going to show you with Immersive Reader, it programs it to that font as well. Okay, so first we're going to look at Kami. We already looked at quizzes. So my students tended to like quizzes more than Kahoot. And the game that we played with quizzes was in a lesson format, so it's a little bit different, but quizzes seems to be more low-key, less stressful, more personalized than Kahoot. So with Kami, I have a couple of different options. Kami is an app and it's also an extension. So you can see I've installed the extension and I can open something with Kami here, but I'm going to go ahead and open this. So, sorry, I have something else opened. There we go. So with Kami, you have a couple different options for types of feedback. And this, I'll share this with you if you would like me to. So Kami is a tool, there is a teacher version, and some of these comment features are only available if you have the paid version, but there's a text comment, a voice comment, and then video comment is paid, and screen capture is a paid feature as well. So one of the things that's great about Kami is that it will read aloud to you. So I'm gonna put the
text comments save time with Kami's new annotation bank to store and reuse common text.
Okay, so you should be able to hear the read aloud while it's reading aloud. And I did switch it to UK just for y'all.
Text feedback. Pinpoint comments by clicking on specific text in the document.
So I just highlighted the text that I wanted it to read and I pressed the read aloud button. I can also change the time here to slow the speed of the reading as well. So if I want it to be slower or quicker, that can help. And this is, research has shown that if it has some sort of feature, to slow or increase the time while it speaks, it'll help students more than if it just read automatically.
Paste a hyperlink in the text box to augment the learning experience.
Boom. So we have a text comment, which is here. Hopefully you can see the comments. So text comment, you can change the picture. So I'm going to put a pink dot here, and I clicked on a space and then I leave a text comment. So text comment right here. Also, if I don't want to type, if I just want to say something, I can click on the microphone and do voice typing. I am typing with my voice, exclamation point. So you can see that's super easy to use for a text comment. Then we also have a voice comment. So click anywhere on the page to make an audio comment, and I'm going to do pink again. And you can see I have a little dot right here. So it automatically starts recording once you press where you want the dot to be, and I'll stop it now. And you can see I have a little dot right here. So it automatically starts recording once you press where you want the dot to be, and I'll stop it now. And it also has captions if students want to read captions. And then you also have the video comment. This will probably not work because I'm already using my camera. Yeah. So since I'm already using my camera for Zoom, it's not going to let me record, but it would look very similar to that. And then I can also record the screen as well. And you can pick which screen you want to record. Screenception. I'm recording. This is my camera. I'm scrolling up and down. Done. So here, this is a great way for you to annotate and discuss student work. So you could also write on the student work while you are annotating, while you are recording the screen. So the video comment would look like this. It would just have your face on it instead of that, instead of the screen. So that's Cami. And then another way that teachers use Cami in my district is to make worksheets more interactive. So here, students, a traditional assessment, students might have to fill in the blank with the correct definite article. But instead of that, as a teacher, I would change it to a speaking assignment. So that way students can comment and they can just leave a voice comment right here with the correct answers. So Nathalie aime bien l'école, Patrick adore les frites, Adi et Ella aiment la glace, Sarah et Mia détestent la musique classique, Alexia déteste les maths. So that way I can assess student speaking rather than just writing. And if a student is able to speak the correct answer, being given that time, being given the prompt, it's still assessing the concept the same way, it's just in a different way. So you as a teacher, you can write a reply, you can also leave a voice comment. But like I shared before, the video and the screen capture are premium subscription, I believe. So that is Cami. And then there is another slide with a couple more ideas for you to implement Cami with as well. Okay, let's move on to Mote. Are you familiar with Mote? Yes, thanks, Joe. So yes, Joe does love the Mote. So you can see I already have the Mote recorder here. Again, giving students the opportunity to show what they know by explaining it, whether you want them to explain grammatical structures in English or you want them to use the target language to communicate. Mote is a great way for students to be able to have that freedom to answer in their time that they would like to. They have time to prepare, they know what the question is beforehand, and then they use their time in class to record their answer. So later on, they are more likely to answer a question in real time. They just need that extra processing time. So we have Mote and then immersive reader. And I said baked into tech. So immersive reader is available through Microsoft, and they have done a lot of work on immersive reader to make it available in multiple languages. So you can use immersive reader in a variety of languages. So here we have English, you can change it to syllables. It also can label the parts of speech. It also has a dictionary that is a visual dictionary for younger learners if they are not as good with words. So here we can see tiger, there's a picture of a tiger. And then line focus, it can read word by word. Yeah, immersive reader is really amazing. And we just need to let our kids have that opportunity to read. And then lastly, we have Flip. What was formerly Flipgrid is now Flip. So again, increasing student voice, yes. Christina, could you elaborate on what you mean? Flipgrid is like a Snapchat discussion board, but again, giving students that opportunity to speak and to explain what they know instead of just asking them questions that require writing. So not only does this increase student voice, yes, not only does increasing student voice help students display what they know, but it also makes it a little bit easier on you as a teacher because you don't have as much to grade in the same traditional ways if you use the technology to support students. And to assess the students, you can use a rubric to easily grade what they have created. So bada bing, bada boom. If they meet the criteria, they get the grade. If they don't meet the criteria, they don't get the grade. So that's one of the good things too. It makes it easier for you and for the student. So the final thought that I will leave you with, and I'm going to go to slideshow. So this is from Bill Van Patten. He is a big second language acquisition teacher guy here in the States. But basically, this quote is from his book, From Input to Output, A Teacher's Guide to Second Language Acquisition. So language acquisition happens in only one way, and all learners must undergo it. They must have exposure to communicative input, and they have to process it. The brain must organize the data. Learners must acquire output procedures, and they need to interact with other speakers. There's no way around these fundamental aspects of acquisition. They are the basics. So bottom line, they have to organize the data that they're learning, and we as teachers get to help them organize that data. So why not help everybody organize data in ways that are easier for them to understand and use? So that is my final thought. The next to last slide, here's some resources if you want to look over anything that I've talked about, and then some other resources as well. The book I kept mentioning is the last slide. It is available on Amazon and probably at your favorite used book site. And lastly, again, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me or tweet me. And that is all I have for you. We have about 3 minutes left if anyone has any questions. And I meant to start off by saying I'm not an expert in dyslexia, but I definitely learned through teaching students during COVID. So I feel like I'm an expert now.
That was amazing, Melinda. Thank you so much. It's just
Thank you.
Yeah, really, really fascinating. I didn't realize Cami could do as much as that. I had a quick look at the pricing, and it looks like it's the teacher plan that you have to go for to get like audio commenting and video commenting. So that would be about $99 a year. But then, of course, if you're going to use it in lots and lots of classes, I think that's well worth doing. I think that's brilliant. So just to clarify, when you were using the technology during COVID, that you were putting into place lots of these strategies to support dyslexic learners, because my heart went out to dyslexic learners, particularly during the pandemic, because of the support, the extra support they would then need in a remote teaching context, and how they were getting on. And is that right? Is that something that you had researched about before, or something that you had to then research about straight away and then put into practice to cater to the needs in a remote teaching context?
Kind of, it was after March 2020. I started grad school in August 2020. So we were back at school, but we wore masks, which again, they can't see your face, so they can't learn the same way that they would normally.
Yeah.
But I think I definitely learned some of these strategies because I had students that had dyslexia, but the only accommodations at the school that we were able to give them, because it was a private school, was extended time and preferential seating. And those don't really do a lot, but they can.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And another thing I wanted to ask about was you were talking about having a beige background was good to support dyslexic learners. So in immersive reader, you can have different backgrounds, can't you? You can have like sort of a green background and a blue background.
Right.
I think I'm right in saying that there's like a continuum, isn't there? Well, or that different dyslexic learners correspond find that different color backgrounds are helpful to them as well, but it's not like it's just like the one color. Is that what you found as well, or have you found that it's particularly beige seems to be the way forward?
I think it was one study that I read that recommended beige, and it might have been a recommendation on another dyslexic organization site, but I found a lot of my students preferred the dark or the night setting where it was a black background with white letters, and I think that's a setting in immersive reader as well with line focus. So it really just depends on the student.
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
template?
What I love about technology, the way in which you
Oh,
can have
wait,
choice.
let me stop sharing. Let me grab the template that I used real quick from Slides Go. There it is. Pastel Minimalist Elegant Lines Portfolio.
Fantastic.
Yep.
That's lovely. The
And
line
again,
I thought was
go ahead.
it's also very interesting, isn't it? I mean, in the olden days, we used to just use a ruler. You just like take a ruler down the page. It's the same. It's the same idea, really. But it's all, as you say, it's all about processing.
Right.
Therefore, if the student is able to reduce the cognitive overload, as it were, by line focus or moving the ruler down and what have you, then it all helps. That's really interesting. That's it. Any other comments from anyone in the chat? Any other questions at all? As we have Melinda here live, and thank you so much for offering to support us moving forward as well. That's just brilliant. I'm sure we'll get lots of views of the video as well. I'm sure people will get in touch as well. And just to clarify, so Melinda has very kindly offered for us to share the presentation, so it will be on my YouTube channel at JoeDale100, or I've even got my own username of @JoeDale on YouTube, which is like quite a new thing. You can sort of claim your username. So before any other Joe Dales in the world claimed it, I claimed it. So yeah, so there we are. But yeah, if you just do a search for Joe Dale 100 or @Joe Dale, you should find it straight away. And Melinda's also very kindly offered to share the presentation as well, and how nice it's been set out. And so, as always, Helen will put together a web page dedicated to this presentation with the recording, the presentation itself, and any other links. I put in the chat as well the link to the book that you mentioned, which is suggesting you can get it for about £25, which is very reasonable, I think. And yeah, just great. Helen, any final words to wrap us up?
Well, I've been writing words, I've been following everything. I mean, really, that was an absolutely model presentation, I think you gave, because you were putting into practice. I like what you said, baking in what you were telling us. I mean, it was just superb teaching technique. And I thought it was interesting that you were quoting things which are, books that have been around quite a long time. Those are names that I can remember. But really, it's absolutely right that we should just keep reminding ourselves of these things, because you learn about it at college, then other ideas come along, and we have to keep on thinking about ourselves. Yes, but sometimes things can look too elaborate. And and I've just looked at the example you gave for the slides there. That way, that just simply saying, yeah, don't always put things in a list, because I always do that.
Mm.
And I thought, yeah, that really is, it's much more memorable. So a superb presentation. Thank you, Joe, for discovering Melinda. And I must have met you, Melinda, because I was at that Linguoscope conference as well, on the beach. So
There we are.
it was quite dark,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
Right, yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's
With
right.
that famous author, won't we? I seem to remember. So,
Yeah.
but no, absolutely superb. And as Joe has said, I'm sure loads of people are going to be looking at this video, and all of us who've been here, we're all going to be recommending it. So thank you ever so much. So everybody, feel free now, if you want to open up your video, you can, but certainly to say thank you very much to Melinda before I stop the recording. There they are, look.
They're real people. They're really
Yeah.
That's lovely.
Here's Christina. We've got two Christinas. Oh, but one with a Christina Christopher. Isn't it? So if there isn't anything else that anybody wants to say, I'll stop the recording now. Is that okay?
Okay, doke.
Oh, we've got Christopher
Thank
from
you.
Liverpool.
Yep.
Let me.
But yeah, so feel free if you want to turn your mics on and ask Melinda a question directly.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Oh yes, I've just said. I'm just concentrating on stopping the recording now, because I'm always nervous at this bit. Am I doing the right thing? So stop live stream. Stop live stream, and
I do have to say, I think, Christopher, you're in Liverpool, right? And that's probably the only place that I knew, because it's where the Beatles are from. Sorry.
The only thing people know, I think, about Liverpool.